Well, hello to everyone who is on. I'm glad that you guys are with us again tonight for large group online. So I don't know if it felt like a longer week in between because we had large group last Saturday, but it is good to be back with you guys now. Um, I know that you can almost feel like you're kind of stuck, right? Just day after day, week after week, it seems like we're doing really just a lot of the same stuff without really changing it up. And while I would much rather be in person at large group, enjoying this nice weather with all of you, I know that I'm grateful that we have this opportunity to connect online and to be able to chat with each other on the side here, but really to use this opportunity to continue growing together spiritually in our faith, having messages and conversations around what it means to be more like Jesus, but really to trust and rely on God in this season. So, as always, we've got a couple of things kind of set up for you guys tonight. We're going to be continuing in our Faith in an Anxious World series, a conversation that I think is really important for us to continue having. And we're going to be focusing on life in a hurtful world. And sometimes these conversations can be hard to have. Sometimes this can be a hard topic, but I think it's worth it for us to explore, especially as the church. So with that tonight, we have a short game, as we always try to do. As always, I want to see you guys give your best and keep track of your own score. I think I've seen different winners kind of at the top from week to week. So if that hasn't been you yet, keep trying at it, and let's see if you can. Maybe you've improved on some of your trivia abilities. So. Or there's some of you who are just going to type in random letters and hopefully, maybe win something. I hope you don't take your actual tests like that if you ever have multiple choice or standardized testing. Um, Anyways, let's jump into it. There's a lot to talk about tonight and a lot for us to experience together, even online. So let me switch over here. I'm always trying like a different setup from time to time. I have actually less tech than I usually do as I'm trying to like figure this out. And so, anyways, I think we can do this. Switch over to our game here. All right, here we go. Let's stay social, but keep our distance and try to figure out these distances socially. So, hopefully you have been practicing the social distancing that we have been informed and strongly encouraged to do. Trust me, there have been plenty of times where I just kind of want to give up on that. I want to quit. I want to be in person with my small group. Just kind of whatever that looks like. But really, I want to do my part, not just to stay safe for myself, but to keep other people safe. And I'm sure you've heard that over and over and over again, and every day, every week, this keeps going on and on. It does get harder, but this is important because I look forward to the day where we can be cleared to meet again in person, to actually have large group together, especially to be together and enjoy some of the events that we always look forward to in the spring and in the summer as well too. So while we are in online mode, let's do some social distancing trivia and see how well you guys can do. It's always multiple choice, A, B, C, or D. I will throw up the questions, give you a few seconds to answer. I want to see your answers in the comment. Keep track yourself. This is large group. Jesus is watching. He is here. Be honest. It's just a trivia game, but let's see who is the most knowledgeable. All right. First question we have here. I hope you guys are ready. I hope I gave you enough time to kind of mentally warm up, grab your snacks, whatever it is that you need. Also, no Googling. That is also cheating. Even though we're all distant from each other, let's socially try and guess these distances. Why won't this first one turn off instructions? There we go. What is the distance from Orlando, Florida to Anaheim, California? I saw that Emily was on, so let's see if she can get this since she lives in Orlando, in my least favorite state of all time. And even though I have lived on both the West Coast and the East Coast, I've never actually been to California. So there's some fun fact trivia for you. So Is it A, B, C, or D? You can read the miles for yourself. So, but the answer is B, 2,493 miles, which you would think it would be more than that, right? Does anybody know what like the actual miles is from like coast to coast, farthest possible? Maybe if you go from like Southern California to where we are, the Maine coast or something like that. So, anyways, going on to the next one. Keep track for yourself here. What is the distance from the Earth to the Sun? Is it 149 million kilometers? Is that what that is? KMS? Obviously my public school education failed me. 384,400 kilometers, 698 million, or none of the above. I know the answer only because I'm staring at the answer on my screen. But let's see how well you all can do. Maybe your public education failed you also. But I hope not. Hopefully you're still doing your lessons. Let's see. Or if you are a fan of The Office, you would probably know or be close to it too. Andy knew it for sure. Revealing the answer, it is A, 149 million kilometers. KMS, kilometers, I don't know. Anyways, there you go. Keeping track. Question number 3, if you don't know which one we were on, in their hit song from 1988 called I'm Gonna Be, what distance do the Proclaimers say they would walk? Is it 100 miles, 300 miles, 400 miles, or 5? I know that the Proclaimers were... Who even knew what the name of the song was if we didn't tell you? And then who would have known that the Proclaimers were the ones who wrote the song and played the song? Revealing the answer, it is D, 500 miles. If you get all of them wrong, this should be the one that you have gotten right. Oh boy, here we go. I read through these before, but I don't know how to pronounce some of these names sometimes. Yonge Street or Yonge. Anybody from Canada or been to Canada? Specifically Toronto. In Toronto, Canada is the longest street in the world. What is its total distance? I also think it's kind of funny that this trivia is using it in miles when we had a metric system answer before. And this is Canada we're talking about, which I'm pretty sure uses the metric system. Anyways, is it A, B, C, or D? Give you a couple seconds to catch up here. Select your answer. I'm assuming the answers are coming in now for for this question, and it is C, 1,178 miles. I'm not really sure, so I hope you're keeping track, but it seems like for the most part, no one's gotten any answers right. Maybe one or two. I'm not really sure. You keep track, you let us know. Let's keep going. True or false, Miami, Florida is closer to Brazil than it is to Washington State. Not Washington, D.C., but the state of Washington in the Great Pacific Northwest. Is it A, true, B, false? You have a better chance of guessing this time. 50-50. The answer is true. Look at that. I kind of believe that. Florida's kind of way out there. Maybe that's the farthest distance, right? If you go to like the top corner of Washington all the way down to Miami in the continental United States, not including Alaska. I legitimately just forgot what Alaska was called, or Hawaii. Let's keep moving on. So, oh man, quarantine really gets to you after a while. Who holds the world record for long jump with a total distance of 8.59 meters? And I'm pretty sure it's not any of you. There's a whole nother country between us and Alaska, though, so I'm not counting that in this right now. It's Carl Lewis, Mike Powell, Tajay Gale, Mitchell Watt. Bonus points if you actually know who any of these people are. So is it A, B, C, or D? Put in your answers now because it is B, Mike Powell. Of course it was Mike Powell. I would never really assume Mike Powell. He seems like just kind of your standard guy, right? Mike Powell. I feel like these extraordinary, crazy athletes who do crazy things always have some, just doesn't sound like a like a long jumper's name. I could be wrong. So any mics out there want to prove me wrong and send in your video, I will play it at next week's large group. All right, let's go. A couple more questions. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai is the tallest building in the world with a total height distance of 828 meters. What is the second tallest building in the world? Let's see. A, is it 1, World Trade Center in New York City? B, International Commerce Center, Hong Kong? C, Shanghai Tower in Shanghai? Or D, Princess Tower in Dubai? What I really want to know is like who actually knows like any of these for sure. Like this comes up and you're like 100% I could answer this, no question, without guessing and get it right. But let's reveal the answer. You've had time. It is C, Shanghai Tower in Shanghai. Bonus points if you have been to Shanghai. So if you're on and watching and you personally have been there, let us know. It'd be interesting. All right, in the 1994 movie Forrest Gump, Forrest goes on a run that lasts 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours. What is the estimated distance that Forrest ran? I guess yeah. Like which of you is like the oldest here of like the students? And because let's see, if you were born in 94, you're long out of college now, right? If I'm doing that math correctly, you've got to be. I've been out for a while, and that's only a few years away from me. Man, better question is how many of you have actually seen Forrest Gump? So is it 19,024 miles, 21,852 miles, 24,701 miles, or none of the above? A, B, C, or D. Answers coming in. It is 19,024 miles. You have seen it. Congratulations. Very proud. Some people regard it as one of the best films of all time. Maybe. I don't know. I don't really care. It's just okay. Let's see. 2 more questions. Hope you're keeping track. We're almost done. In 2019, Ashrita Furman set the record. See? Look at this name. This sounds like somebody who would have some sort of crazy record or something. Set the record for riding a blank underwater for a total distance of 1.3 miles, which is wildly impressive. I don't like going 1.3 miles anyway, walking, running, driving. Is it A, a unicycle, B, a submersible scooter? I hope it's B. C, a tricycle, or D, a snowmobile? D would also be funny and impressive. All right, gave you a few seconds. Get your answers in. Don't try any of these at home. It is a unicycle. Look at that. That's interesting. Can anybody ride a unicycle on land, like not underwater? Because that also is kind of impressive if you can do that as well. So, okay, here we go. Final question. What is the distance between a regulation soccer net's goal posts? 7.32 meters, 8 yards, 24 feet, or is it D, all of the above? Oof. Even if you know soccer, you also got to know math here to make sure all of the above would even be an accurate answer. But it almost just seems like a cop-out. I never trust all of the above answers in tests. Anyways, give you a few seconds. Any soccer pros might actually know this. We haven't done soccer trivia yet. I don't know if we will because I find soccer to be boring. No offense to anyone, but I just don't. Let's see. A, B, C, or D, and the answer is all of the above. Even if you didn't know the answer, if you could do math and know whatever our measurement system, American measurement system is, and the metric system, you could have gotten that, right? Because they're all the same. All right. That's all the trivia I have for you. We have a lot tonight to also get to, so we're only going to do the one game, but maybe we'll introduce some more later on. I always enjoy seeing who, like, your record. Hopefully you kept track. I think there were 10 questions there. Let us know Seems like everybody struggled maybe a little bit more on this one than the ones in the past, but we'll see other games and trivias that I can come up with and find later on. So, okay, let's move. We'll move back to me. So I mentioned already tonight we're gonna that we're continuing in our series. This is part 3 of 4 of the Faith in an Anxious World series that we're in. We're talking about anxiety and kind of the overwhelming feeling and emotions that can come with that and are related to that, not just exclusively that. And I hope you've been able to follow along with us. And if you haven't, I really encourage you to go back and look at some of the other large groups. Tonight, though, we're going to transition into worship and spend that time together. As always, I encourage you to try to set aside your distractions, remembering that when we do this, this is a time and opportunity for us to connect with God, to focus on Him. And I hope that this time is an opportunity to kind of prepare your minds and your hearts to be worshiping Him, to be experiencing Him. And even though, yes, we are physically apart, to not be a distraction and kind of take this opportunity to worship, but also to learn away from other people, to be encouraging to one another, to be connected, but really that each of us should be focusing this time on God. So let us go over. Alex and Noel have been gracious to prepare worship for us. So we're going to go into that time, and then I will be back to take us into tonight's message.
Hey again, Crossway Student Ministries. We wanted to kick off tonight's service with some musical worship. And so to start off with, we're going to sing a song called This is Amazing Grace, which you probably already know. So I just encourage you to go ahead and worship however you feel most comfortable. we're going to sing another song, and it's called New Wine. And it's one that we've done a couple of times, so you might be familiar with it. But I just thought it was really fitting for the circumstances that we're in right now. Because for those of us who are in New Hampshire, we just heard that we're going to be in online learning mode for the rest of the school year. So we were hoping we were going to get to go back to school, and we just found out the other day that that's not going to happen, which is really upsetting. And I think a lot of the country is going to end up doing the same thing. And so what I love about this song, New Wine, is that in the verse it says, in the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. And so even though this time right now that we're in feels like we're being crushed and we're being pressed and it's uncomfortable and it's painful and we don't understand why, we know that this doesn't surprise God. None of this is a surprise to him. And that in this moment of crushing for us, he is going to make new wine and bring something new and beautiful. And so I encourage you to just sing along with this song with us. Thank you guys for worshiping with us tonight.
That was awesome. Thank you, Alex and Noel, for sharing that with us. I think those songs are exactly what we need in this time. When I had heard that news also about schools not uh, going back this semester, I felt that for you all, especially for you seniors. I know I'm not experiencing what you are exactly experiencing with that. Um, but I do feel for you, and I know that your community does, and I wish there was something more we could do to kind of come alongside of you in this time, really for all of you students. I know that this isn't easy at all, that we want to do our best to support you and to be there for you. So with that, thank you again, Alex, for leading us. I wasn't going to say this before, but actually, from like 5 years ago to the day when we used to have large group, it wasn't called large group then, but it was youth group. It was student ministries. It was at the Girls Inc. building when the downtown campus used to meet there. A picture had popped up in our like the memories, and it was Alex in 6th grade, a part of leading worship, and she was the only student in the band for student band at the time, but there was a couple adults helping, and so yeah, that was a long time ago. A larger group looks very, very different, but I'm just grateful when I get to witness that kind of legacy being built because of all of you, and I'm glad that we get to share in that together. So I mentioned we are in this series, "Life in an Anxious World," and in this session, that we're gonna together recognize that at times our feelings of pressure and anxiety become more than we can handle on our own. God designed us to be a part of groups and families, as we had talked about, but who care for us, and at times we need to, be able to expand our circle to even professional helpers. We're learning about reaching out to God and sharing honestly with others, and doing so can help keep us from facing anxiety alone. So, anyways, I've got this video that I want us to watch that I think is going to help us to understand. Even if we haven't been there before, it can be hard to kind of put our shoes or ourselves in other people's shoes. And so let's watch this video. I've got notes to unmute myself, but those of you who are watching out, you can let me know if I don't, and then we'll jump into tonight's message.
I think for me, it was realizing that, like, in certain situations that I didn't have the tools to properly combat it. And so when I would get anxious, I would just have to ride it or just, be consumed by it. And that would be really hard.
I was having a hard time just even going to school and making it through the day, and my mom wasn't sure what to do either.
I have really bad flying anxiety, and people will be like, oh, like just take a nap, go to sleep or something, but it's like, I can't do that because I'm so anxious.
Sometimes we experience anxiety that makes it harder to perform our best. Anxiety that is out of proportion to the source of stress we experience leaves us feeling overwhelmed or stuck. When these feelings become more than we can handle on our own, it's okay to seek professional help.
Can I talk about my own experience? So I just did a Google search and looked up therapists near me, or Christian therapists near me, because I wanted a Christian therapist. But then also I contacted a friend whose church had like a directory of resources in the area, and it happened that the Google search was also one of the resources that the church offered. So that's how I found therapy.
A couple of years ago, there was this really big stigma of Black women specifically going to therapy. We were painted as this picture of, no, you are the superhero, you're the strong woman, you don't need this, you can do this. I had a really crazy moment happen, and I'd called my mom, and I was crying my eyes out And I was like, Mom, I think I need to go to therapy. And she was like, great. Without me even knowing, my mom, early in my childhood, actually went to therapy.
For me, I asked a family friend who was a therapist, who's like connected with the network, and she had a contact, and so I ended up making an appointment with that guy, and I really liked him.
So my very first experience of therapy I didn't like, because it felt very like, it felt a little stuffy and I didn't feel comfortable.
I got lucky and I stuck with the first person I was given. I mean, I remember the first couple sessions being like, let's get to know you. Therapy, in a lot of ways, is about giving you tools.
At first, I was very, very nervous. We had like a consultation. I was like, oh my gosh, what do I need to wear? What do I have to say? What questions do I need to bring in? But immediately when I got into the room, I felt like this just weight dropped off of me.
I felt relieved. I felt like I was finally going to be able to understand what I go through and like get the tools necessary to combat it, because I was really beat down by like what I was going through.
I was 17 when I first started seeing a therapist, and it is one of the most life-changing things that could have happened to me at that time. For insight, for healing, for just hope for the future.
Yeah, therapy saved my life. And allowed me to grow, allow me to change, and allow me to accept the things that I had in me that I did not feel like I could have accepted without it. So it truly saved my life. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get help.
Commit to it and you'll be in a better place than you were however so many days ago, hours ago, weeks ago. So
I had such a hard time in middle school and in high school. I had so much anxiety, and from going to therapy, it changed my life, and I now live a life I never knew was possible for myself. I'm so grateful for that, and I want everyone to know that that's possible for them. And you're not alone, and you're never alone, and there's always someone that you can talk to. Always, always.
If you have a friend that's in therapy, I would say the best thing you can do is just support them. Don't try to belittle them. Don't say, oh, you don't need this. Like, say like you're doing the right thing, or like, you're doing something that's gonna really help you. That goes a long way.
I had a lot of friends who wanted to, get in there with me, which was great at certain moments of that time. Give them space if they need space.
What works for you might not work for your best friend, even if you're similar in every other way.
If they want to talk about it, be a listening ear. Especially with men in American society, it's really hard to talk about that stuff. And so when you do, it becomes more of a normal conversation. It's good, it destigmatizes it.
All right. So what I appreciate about that video is the honesty and transparency about seeking help and normalizing talking about how you feel and what you're going through with trusted people, especially with professionals such as counselors and therapists. And that sets us up to continue talking about how help from others intersects with our faith as we each grow to trust and rely on God more. I want to remind you that we have been talking about life in an anxious world. I think that this message is just as relevant in our current circumstances as we continue to face uncertainty for when everything will go back to normal. If you've missed any of the previous messages in this series, I highly recommend that you go back to watch and or listen. You can skip ahead to the message portion of the previous large groups. Each message averages about 20 minutes, which is easy, I think, to fit in. And if you think about replacing just one Netflix sitcom episode with something that could help kind of feed your heart and your soul. And I don't think I'm alone in thinking that this is an important conversation that we all should be having together. So last week we had learned that God designed us to be a part of groups and families and to build a circle that we can ask to be kind of with us when we experience both good times and the bad. But even with people at our side, sometimes life can hand us circumstances that are totally overwhelming, even sometimes hopeless. So with that, we're going to start in Luke chapter 8, starting verse 40. I'm going to be reading from the NLT translation. If you have your Bible or a Bible app or something like that and you want to follow along, go ahead and do that. But we're going to the end of the chapter, so I encourage you to kind of lean in if you're not reading along in the scripture and to focus on the words that I'm going to be reading to you. Starting verse 40. It reads, "On the other side of the lake, the crowds welcomed Jesus because they had been waiting for him. Then a man named Jairus, a leader of the local synagogue, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come home with him because his only daughter, who was about 12 years old, was dying. As Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by the crowds. Then a young woman in the crowd who had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. Could find no cure. Coming up behind Jesus, she touched the fringe of his robe. Immediately the bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. Everyone denied it. And Peter said, "Master, this whole crowd is pressing up against you." But Jesus said, "Someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me." And when the woman realized that she could not stay hidden, she began to tremble and fell to her knees in front of him. The whole crowd heard her explain why she had touched him and that she had been immediately healed. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While he was still speaking to her, a messenger arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue, and he told him, "Your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now." But when Jesus heard what had happened, he said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just have faith, and she will be healed." And when they arrived at the house, Jesus wouldn't let anyone go in except Peter, John, James, and the little girl's father and mother. The house was filled with people weeping and wailing, but he said, "Stop the weeping. She isn't dead, she's only asleep." But the crowd laughed at him because they all knew that she had died. Then Jesus took her by the hand and said in a loud voice, "My child, get up." And at that moment her life returned and she immediately stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were overwhelmed, but Jesus insisted that they not tell anyone what had happened. So in Luke 8, we find people in hopeless situations. The woman's been sick for 12 years. The girl has just died. And these both feel pretty extreme, right? So let's look at the differences in the situation. The woman is completely alone, surrounded by a crowd of strangers. We never learn her name, but the girl has a family all around her and is clearly loved. But both are disconnected from other people by something that they can't control, their health. Jesus is on his way somewhere else. He's not even headed to either of these people or places at the moment. The crowd wants to get where it's going, and so it's really moving along. But Jesus stops in his tracks for both the woman and then changes his course to meet the girl. Wherever he's going, it's not as important in that moment as the people who are in front of him. He's not too busy to stop and notice the woman no one else seemed to have time for, or he doesn't even overlook the girl everyone else has already given up on as being dead. One of the many things that we can observe in this passage of Scripture is, I think there's a couple important ones for us to really look at. First is, no matter how old a person is, or no matter how hopeless things seem, no matter what everyone else thinks, there is a truth here. When we're hurting, we are Jesus' top priority. So although we know that the woman had been suffering for a long time, as long as that young girl had actually been alive, there's no mention of her family or friends, of the woman who touched Jesus' robe. In this story, we're not even given a name or a place that she's from. She's completely anonymous. It's very possible that her bleeding condition caused her to be avoided by Jewish society because of purity rules about not touching people who were bleeding. Or maybe she was self-conscious and pushed people away. Either way, the woman had to make a tough choice to step out of her silent struggle, and no matter how hopeless she felt, to go for help. She's physically healed the instant that she touches Jesus' robes. But he clearly isn't content for the woman just to walk away alone. Physical healing isn't going to solve all of her problems. It's when the woman connects and talks with Jesus that she experiences true peace. So looking back at verses 47 and 48, when the woman saw that she couldn't escape notice, she came trembling and fell before Jesus. In front of everyone, she explained why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. Daughter, your faith has healed you, Jesus said. Go in peace. So, the question to ask is what are some of the reasons that you can think of that the woman might not have jumped and shouted for joy like others have when Jesus has healed them before? Maybe, just kind of on initial observation, is maybe it was an embarrassment or shame or guilt that she felt. Maybe it was a feeling of unworthiness. Just because you've begun to overcome something doesn't mean that the feeling from years of suffering or affliction just go away instantly like her physical ailment had, which is a blessing in itself. So something to kind of ask in reflection is how might you respond if you had been healed without even having to speak to Jesus? The girl in the story, however, has a family, has a home, and servants around her. We even know her father's name and know that he's an important person in town. He's the leader of the synagogue. This girl is valued in society, yet there are some similarities between the way people react each time Jesus stops or that he pauses. So in verse 45, Jesus says, "Who touched me?" When everyone denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds are surrounding you and pressing against you." Then in verse 49, while Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue, from the leader's house, saying that, to the father, "Your daughter has died. Don't bother the teacher any longer." So for just a moment, I want each of us to think and reflect on the similarities and the differences between the ways the crowd and even the people close to Jesus reacted to the sick woman and the dead girl. Often, the world around us and even our families and friends can miss their cue to stop and pay attention. We can all get distracted by our own busyness or by what the world or the culture says is important. And then we end up not seeing how someone near us is feeling. In both the woman's story and the girl's story, Jesus has to remind even his closest followers that people are the most important priority, right? Again, they were headed somewhere else. The crowd was headed somewhere else, and Jesus paused for these people. Both the sick woman and the father had to pause what they were doing and go for help, right? This little girl was sick, so it was the father that came in her place. They each had to reach out. The same is true for us. We have to pause what might be, less important at that moment and reach out for help. And when you experience the same anxiety over and over again, or if you try to ignore it instead of listening to it, you eventually begin to lose hope. Ultimately, unhealthy anxiety that goes unaddressed leads to depression. And when we're depressed, most of us want to be alone and isolate ourselves, especially during the season of life and what's kind of going on around us. It can become a cycle that we can't break on our own. So I want you to think about it. What would happen if instead of keeping things to ourselves in those moments when we feel hopeless, We reached out instead. Even though our feelings may make us feel vulnerable and want to be alone, it's really important that we push ourselves out of our comfort zone and reach out for help, as we have been talking about, just like the sick woman and the girl's father in these stories. And so here, together, I want us to review some important action steps that we can take. We've talked about the daily replay, a spiritual prayer practice that helps you and I look beyond the moment. Sometimes settling your body and mind is really difficult, especially when you have a lot going on. One technique is to focus on your breathing. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you begin to let your body and soul know that it's okay to relax and to rest in God's presence. It is pretty simple, but incredibly effective. It's a matter of shifting kind of from automatic breathing to manual. And so have you ever noticed that when you have a strong feeling like anxiety, stress, or nervousness, that your heart rate starts to beat faster? Your heart is just trying to do its job. And when you start to breathe deeply, your heart gets more oxygen and doesn't have to work as hard. Then this amazing thing happens where your heart slows down and lets your brain know that you aren't in danger any longer. It's really simple, but a powerful way to teach your body and brain to kind of shift gears together into a relaxation mode, to be at peace more than you were. It can be a bit strange at first, but learning how to breathe kind of with your stomach rather than your chest is also really helpful. All you have to do is slowly take 3 seconds to kind of breathe in through your nose, expanding your abdominal area, and then when you breathe in, and then when you take 3 seconds to kind of slowly breathe out through your mouth. Right? It's a little awkward, especially if people are trying to watch you do it, or if other people are around. But as you continue to breathe deep and slow, you begin to take a moment to simply notice God's presence with each breath that you take. While breathing might seem kind of obvious, there's actually some science behind the power of stopping to take a few breaths like this. It can make the difference between feeling completely overwhelmed or being able to kind of cope with whatever's going on in that moment. It's also how God designed our bodies to work. Focusing your mind on something simple like breathing helps to remove the distractions in your mind and kind of around you in that moment. So remember that you don't ever have to handle feelings of anxiety, sadness, stress, or nervousness, or even depression on your own. You have a circle of support, family members, parents, medical professionals, pastors, and your church community who are ready to listen and to help. There are numerous pastors on our own staff at Crossway who you can reach out to and ask for guidance and help, as well as our small group leaders that host groups every single week that you can join in order to be a part of community, to have conversations with others who are in the same journey of faith, but also life as well. So you do need to know that you're not alone in the way that you feel, and you're not alone when you need help. This is a lesson that I continually need to be reminded of, and that even I need to practice. Last week was a really hard week for me. Oftentimes when I don't slow down to practice breathing or asking for help to kind of work through what is causing me anxiety, it ends up kind of taking this toll on me. Usually my body will end up responding before my brain fully gets on board with what is going on, because I've not tried to process the problem in a healthy way. I'll be more irritable, I'll be short-tempered, I won't sleep well, and even if I do sleep a lot, I'm still tired all of the time. I have young children, and they can be a great joy, but at times they can be a great challenge. The breathing exercise has proven to be helpful for me in those tense and frustrating moments. Oftentimes it's not my children that are the problem, it's something else going on that I've not handled or confronted or brought before God. Pausing to breathe is not the only answer, but it's a healthy step in the right direction. Jesus is willing to stop for us, and we have to be willing to approach him for help. Every week, we've been reviewing this. The first is to look up. Pause in the midst of your anxious thoughts to look up and seek God's encouragement through the Bible and by talking with others who are walking in faith. Next is look inside. Reflect on where God is at work in you. And third is look around. Take a good look at your own anxious world to determine where and how to ask for help so that you can be making positive changes in your life. Sometimes your anxiety can be too much for you to handle on your own. There's nothing that's wrong with that necessarily. God has designed each of us to be a part of groups and families who care, and at times, to expand that circle to kind of professional helpers like counselors. Reaching out to God and sharing honestly with others can keep us from facing that anxiety alone, which I imagine a lot of us have felt kind of trapped there before. And so this week, I challenge you to have a conversation with a parent or a trusted adult. Here's why this is really important. You might be feeling fine now, but you're going to have days when you feel more anxious, sad, or unsure of yourself. And that's normal. And if it ever moves beyond normal and starts to feel more serious or even out of control, it helps to know ahead of time who you can go to and what you can do to actually get help. Studies have shown that young people who are struggling with more serious feelings, only half of their families were even aware of it. And honestly, that number could be even less. So we need to be comfortable talking to our families about how we feel. Sit down with a parent while you're at home, especially now more than usual, and talk about who's in your circle. Discuss who needs to be in your circle so that you don't have to face your inner struggles alone. And most important, talk about how you both will work together if you ever feel like you're dealing with more than you can handle. Like previous weeks, there's a discussion guide with some conversation starters. And I encourage you to do this either on your own, taking notes and journaling your thoughts and answers, or with siblings who have watched with you, maybe with your parents, or over video with friends or your small group tonight or tomorrow. And like many things in life, relationships take practice. We do have to learn to recognize toxic, unsafe, or hurtful relationships with friends or people in our circles that might bring us down or draw us away from God. It's also important to recognize that life at home may not always be perfect. Parents are humans too, and dealing with their own shortcomings and struggles and even anxiety. Grace is required on both sides always. Wherever you are in your relationship at this moment, it can be possible to put aside your differences and come together for this really important conversation. Would you all join me in prayer as I close? Father, we thank you for this time and this opportunity. I thank you for this community of students. It is my prayer that everyone who hears this message knows that even in the midst of their anxious feelings, their sadness, their nervousness, their hurt, their pain, whatever suffering that they are experiencing, if they feel alone in that, to know that they are not alone. That Jesus has already stopped for each and every one of them. And I pray now for the strength and the courage to reach out, to experience the healing love and power of Christ. And Father, I just pray for patience and courage for students to have these conversations with family members, with parents, with siblings, with close trusted adults, in order that we all can be better and become more comfortable about having these hard conversations. And ultimately, Father, I pray for hope and peace, knowing full well that you have offered that to us through the cross. And I thank you for that love and for that sacrifice. We give you all of the praise and the glory. Amen. Well, I thank you all for joining us for another large group online. I do appreciate the opportunity that we get to connect in this way. Even though it's not the most ideal opportunity and situation, I urge all of you to make the most of what we have in front of us. continue to be dedicated to the community by connecting with each other, by gathering in this way in order that we can learn. Ask questions, reach out for help, join a small group, be consistent with your small group. Check in on one another and just be encouraging and for everybody to do their part in order for us to be able to start returning to kind of a normalcy for us and continue to anticipate what we have to look forward to. And so with that, I just thank you again for this opportunity. Maybe we'll do something where you guys can send in like short little videos, just like a quick recording on your phone or something, telling us some of your favorite memories about large group or favorite memories about iServe, even though I am sad too that we don't get to experience that this spring. And just maybe even sharing like, hey, what are you looking forward to the first time that we're back at large group together, and we might have the opportunity to kind of share that here and for it to be something that's joyous and helps us to continue to anticipate the good things ahead of us. So thank you again for being here with us, and I look forward to connecting again this weekend. There's not a whole lot of announcements to really share right now, but we will be back on our regular schedule Sundays at 4 p.m. here on the YouTube channel. We encourage you, if you don't follow us on Instagram or Facebook, to go follow us there at Crossway Stumin. That's Stumin. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, that's a really helpful way to stay in touch, get reminders, an easier way to find this than kind of going through all of the other links. And I know that like over 50% of you who watch aren't subscribed to the channel because YouTube tells me that. Share this with other people and invite them to participate in this with you. So that's all I have for now. It has been really great to connect with you guys in this way. If there's ever anything I can do, if you have thoughts or ideas, I'm always open to that. And as always, I encourage you to go online and find a small group that you can connect with. So stay safe, miss you guys, and have a great week.